Welcome back, Mr. Goodberry. The First Star Logistics studio is fully equipped and ready to record.
Welcome back to Bengals On The Brain, presented by First Star Logistics. I'm your host, Joe Goodberry, and the Bengals just completed their preseason for 2024, meaning the regular season is finally here. You know, you're excited when camp gets here. You're excited when preseason gets here. And then when the regular season, it's more of a sigh of relief. Like, okay, now we know who's injured. Now we know what the roster looks like. Now we know who's here. Now we know who's available, what this team looks like. The rookies pass their tests, right? Of do they belong? Do they look like they belong? Do they look like they can help your team? And yeah, the Bengals went 0-3 in the preseason. Does it matter? Who knows? But they lost 27-14 to the Colts. I'll recap a little bit of that, set the stage for the roster cutdown in that week we have in between before the regular season starts, and go over some of what we saw in the final preseason game where no starters played, even though we saw Joseph Ossai warming up. Charlie Jones, who you can consider a starter, warming up, and then ended up playing, and Joseph Ossai did not. So, you know, that I think the Bengals realized. I still always think about that game in Washington where Ossai was out there. Still too much. Was that last year? It was, wasn't it? Anyway, they didn't make that same mistake this year, and they deactivated Joseph Ossai. I'm not going to say his name again. And Charlie Jones starts the game with a big kick return, the best kick return we've had so far. Travion Williams comes all the way across the field, hits the block, and seals the gunner on that side. And Charlie Jones goes right up that seam, and big game. I mean, we'll take that every single time. Charlie Jones, remember, he had a big punt return versus the Ravens last year for the touchdown. Yeah, it was Ravens. And I think he can be a good kick returner as well. You got two guys back there now because they can kick it either way. And the way it's all set up, you want two guys back there. And if it's going to be Travion and Charlie, if I'm the other team, I'm kicking it to Travion. You're going to have Charlie come block for him and be the lead blocker. And on a slower guy, I'm aiming it towards the running back in that scenario. And then from there, the defense held up pretty well, other than that initial touchdown for the Colts where Anthony Richardson and the Colts starters were out there. So to be clear, they drive down the field, they score. Nobody really out there that is going to play a ton for the Bengals. The only guy is Jordan Battle, and then he gets his chance on a play where it looked like a miscommunication, which happened to the Colts quite a few times, I would say. Looked like 83 might have been their tight end, hooked and went out. And what he thought maybe was a zone, it was man coverage. Jordan Battle came down to cover him. Richardson threw it to where he thought he was, right to his lap. Jordan Battle picks it off. Probably the only guy. And probably if you were to ask me going into camp, like, all right, think of like a guy you think is going to play a big role. Who's still going to be out there this year in the fourth or third preseason game? And I wouldn't have said Jordan Battle, but here he is. He catches it, pick six, touchdown, big play for him. Good for him. I hope he feels the confidence. I hope he's still a major part of this defense because I think when you get a young player to play as well as he did as a rookie, that's typically a good sign for his future. And that would be a big asset if he was a good player for them. So I still want to see it. And I hope he's still got it in him. I hope he's part of the rotation. From there, though, on the defensive side, just to finish there, and then we'll come back. We didn't see guys like Chris Jenkins. You know, we didn't see Akeem Davis-Gaither. We didn't see key backups. DJ Turner, Dax Hill fighting for that job. So apparently that's camp's done. Preseason's done. Is it Dax's job? Is Dax cornerback too? Feels like it. We did see Josh Newton playing on the boundary and then playing in the slot once Jalen Davis came out of the game. It looked like John Meta, who we did the film review, middle linebacker, played over Shaka Hayward, over Devin Harper, although I thought Hayward and Harper had moments as well. So, you know, how many linebackers do you keep? What's up with Joe Bacci? Can Joe Bacci stay healthy? Is it even worth keeping? When you got a veteran like that can stay healthy, maybe you keep Hayward, maybe you keep Harper and John Meta. I think you've got to figure that out. Linebacker went from being, I mean, if you're a new follower of the Bengals, it seems like they've had good linebackers the whole time. This wasn't always the case. And now they've got actual depth. To the point where I think Devin Harper can make another team. He's good on special teams. That's why the Bengals acquired him on waivers last year. It's because they needed a special teamer. Was he the replacement for Joe Bocci last year when Bocci went down? He may have been. So, I mean, like, you can make that same argument now if they don't want to deal with Bocci and his injuries and go with the younger guys that can play special teams. And John Meta had a couple special teams, one tackle, one where he blew up a blocker. Yeah, so he plays it. And I think there's a chance for him to make the roster for sure. And then at safety, you got like Dijon Anthony had a penalty. We've heard a lot of talk about him playing with the ones. I'm still waiting to see it. I know he may be the Trey Flowers role, but I feel like you've got enough corners to do that with. And you could do it with Josh Newton. You could kick Dax Hill inside and let DJ Turner go out to the boundary. So I think they have a lot more options than Dijon Anthony, even though I think he makes the roster for sure. I think Tyson Anderson makes it. I think you go 5 safeties, you go 5 corners, which means Jalen Davis, who continues to flash enough, and I think he's a quality player. If he was more athletic or bigger and or both, he'd definitely be a starter around the league. But I think even so, watch for a team that maybe needs a nickel guy, a slot guy, even a depth slot guy. Watch for them to maybe be interested in Jalen Davis. I think he'll find a home, whether that's via a trade right at the end or just a waiver claim. I think he can play, and I think if they're only keeping 5 corners, it's hard to justify keeping him over Josh Newton, right? You can't do it. So can you get Jalen Davis on the practice squad? Can you keep him around? Maybe, potentially, and with the new rules of the practice squad. We'll have to see what that. Cedric Johnson at end, we highlighted him a couple times over the preseason so far on the film. Again, flashed. Again, did his thing. Justin Blazek on the other side had a sack, forced fumble from the left defensive end spot. That's great. So the DN depth stood up today and did their job against some quality backups, guys like Blake Freeland, who was a least decent draft pick out of BYU. So these aren't the worst offensive linemen out there. None like the flip it to the other side. The Bengals didn't start any of their starters off on the offensive line. It was interesting to see Cody Ford at left tackle, Jackson Kirkland at right tackle, giving Kirkland every chance to make the team. We've known he can play guard. He was a tackle in college. Now he can play tackle on both sides after left tackle last week, right tackle this week. It'll be his key in making a roster. If not with the Bengals, maybe with somebody else. I think it's with the Bengals, though. Matt Lee played 3 quarters, I want to say, at center before Trey Hill was inserted. Jackson Carman was inserted. I don't think Hill or Carman make the roster. I don't think they're good enough. I don't think they had good enough good enough performances in preseason to warrant another year of development, which when you look at it, Deontay Smith, Jackson Carman, Trey Hill, same draft class, 2021, pull your hair out if you were amongst the people then in a very, very good offensive line draft class. Pull your hair out if you're one of the people that said these are bad draft picks the moment they made them. And it turned out to be such almost no positive impact other than a couple flashes in getting through the 2022 playoffs with Jackson Carman at left tackle. How did they do that? I have no idea. But they got through that Bills game in the snow. And those guys played well. So I'm not trying to take that away from them. That was a great moment in a game we will remember fondly, but yikes. At running back, though, Travion Williams had his best day. And I was on with Bangalorean and Drew Garrison on the Big Play show, and we were talking. I'm like, this might be Travion Williams' best game in a long time. Long time. I don't think he would make many other rosters. And I know he plays special teams. I know he can pass protect. I know he's got a little bit of size that maybe these other guys don't have ahead of him. But he just doesn't offer much special. And then he started breaking some tackles and breaking some runs. And Travion Williams had a very good performance. It's going to go a long way for him. I think he's still locked in as running back 3. I just don't think he should be. I think the Bengals should continue to look at running back to see what they can do there. Defensive tackle, like Zach Carter, if you can upgrade from that with a veteran, I say do it. I think 5th defensive end now, if we're considering Miles Murphy, who also before the game was reported by Jeremy Fowler that will miss 4 to 6 weeks. So that's 4 games potentially, because we got 2 weeks before the first game, sort of. But 4 games potentially, you have to figure out that position. And you have to find a left defensive end that can go in and rotate with Sam Hubbard, because Cedric Johnson, Trey Hendrickson, And Joseph Osai, while he's played other spots, those guys have been primarily right defensive ends. And I just don't think you can throw out Cedric Johnson out there and expect him to do the things you need him to do as a rotational piece. So the Bengals have to figure that out. So defensive tackle, an upgrade over Zach Carter on the 53. Defensive end, you got to figure out a guy to add to this roster. You can always look for offensive line depth, especially at guard. I think Mims is supposed to be back for week 1, so I'm okay with the tackle depth. We'll have to figure, if he is healthy, then we'll go from there, and that's fine. You can take that, especially if Jackson Kirkland could make the roster as a guard tackle, so could Cody Ford. Well, then you're not doing so bad. So let's do this live. We'll do it live. Orlando Brown, Cordell Volson, Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, Trent Brown as your starters, more than likely. Amarius Mims, Matt Lee, and then Ford and Kirkland. Can you keep 9? Some of the projections I did, I had one I did was 9 and one I did was 8. I think 9 makes sense if you only go 3 running backs with Travion Williams and not claiming a guy, but maybe you upgrade and find a guard. Maybe you upgrade and find a running back 4 or running back 3. As good as I think this team is, I think they're deficient in a few spots there. D tackle, DN, O-line always, running back, and maybe 2 running backs. But, from there, the tight end position's been weird. Do you keep Tanner Hudson over a Tanner McLaughlin, who we didn't see McLaughlin very much at all? We keep seeing Cam Grandy out there because Cam Grandy is a big body that can be the wide tight end backup to Drew Sample. So I expect Cam Grandy to be on the practice squad. But were they hiding Tanner McLaughlin to get him on the practice squad? Are they unhappy with Tanner McLaughlin? Like, where is it? Because I think if you're constructing this roster and you're looking at tight end and you're looking at Gesicki as a potential receiver, because Gesicki over his career has played about 75 to 85% of his snaps at either slot receiver or wide receiver, more than a tight end. He's a big wide receiver. You got to start thinking of him that way when you start creating the roster and thinking of the 53, not just the 53, but the active 46. Is it still 46? I think it is on game day. So if Gesicki's a receiver, and that's a big part of your offense, if he goes down, Tanner Hudson is a great replacement for that. Hudson's spent like 65% of his snaps at slot or out wide with the Bengals. So that's a direct replacement. But when you have Drew Sample as the Y, you really don't have a backup to the Y. And the Y is the guy on the line of scrimmage. He's going to handle DNs a little bit more. You need those guys to be a little bit bigger. They need to be blockers. They need to be stout at the point of attack, running the ball. I don't think McLaughlin can do that. I don't think Eric All can do that. I think both, maybe in a year or 2, they can develop into that. But I think they're more of the H-back type roles right now. So it'll be interesting to see how they use that type of player and which one makes sense. You have to keep Eric All. But if it comes down to Hudson versus McLaughlin, 4 years of control with McLaughlin, better player right now with Hudson that probably fits as a direct replacement for Gesicki if you need to, if Gesicki goes down. I think that might outweigh the 4 years of McLaughlin, and you could probably get him on the practice squad. He was a 5th or 6th round pick, something like that. Anyways, I think it was 5th, right? Anyway, there'll be someone in the comments that'll be like, how don't you remember this? Why? It's 11:30 at night. We just watched the whole game. My brain is fried, and I got to work at 6 a.m. So, receiver, got to talk about it. Germaine Burton still out there. 4th quarter, preseason, again. Is this telling that the staff doesn't trust him? That he's not where he needs to be? There was a weird moment on the telecast between Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit where they're talking about Germaine Burton, and one of them says, well, you can't sleep during meetings, can you? And no one said, nope. Are they talking about college Germaine Burton, or is that now Germaine Burton? Because if it's now, that's scary. If it's now, I understand why he's out there late in the preseason. What does that mean for early in the season? Is he going to be active? Is he going to be playing? We still haven't seen him in the slot. Remember we talked about he's got slot outside versatility. We never saw him in the slot. We really only saw a vertical route tree from him in preseason. And guess what? He was great at it. he can get deep. He can win on the outside and he can win at the catch point. Those are valuable. Those are great things to have. Those are great things to have in the depth receiver. And maybe that just means that's what he is as a rookie. And that's fine. They need to find a way to get more explosive. Remember last year, the backup outside guy basically is Trent Irwin and Andre Yosivas, and you needed both of them at times. And Yoshi averaged 7.7 yards per catch. So you need guys that can get downfield. And Germaine Burton shows he can do that and do it consistently. Sure, against depth guys or guys that won't make rosters or practice squad guys, but he showed it in college as well, that is his skill, and he can still at least do that. Now, maybe that's a Chris Henry role as a rookie, right? Maybe he's just going to rotate in and go deep and get some and take the top off the other side so we can focus on what's going on with JaMarr Chase and T. Higgins and, get the ball to our playmakers as we're supposed to. And if they want to single and not put a safety over there with Burton, we'll take our shots there too, with Joe Burrow laying it in there. Better than Logan Woodside and Rocky Lombardi have for the Bengals. So, a lot to talk about there. I think the receiver room is set, right? So, we know who the 6 are. But I think Cedric Jackson makes the practice squad. I think he's done enough to show that he can at least play special teams, add some speed, and do some things. I think I'd like to have him. Nothing to talk about at quarterback. There is, though, to finish the wide receiver conversation. There was a report from Richard Skinner, who was a local reporter, and he was on with Austin Elmore, ESPN 1530. And Audie Elmore tweeted this out that JaMarr Chase's camp is looking for 4 years and $160 million. I had to make sure. 160, 4 years, 160. So $40 million a year on his extension. And my first reaction was like, easy, do it. And I think people have kind of freaked out about that. Like, that's too much. That's more than Justin Jefferson. Guys, there's two things here at play. Number one, I think he's just as good as Justin Jefferson. So I don't care if he gets more or not. The guy who signs latest is the guy who makes the most money. CeeDee Lamb might get more than JaMarr Chase. Doesn't mean he's better than JaMarr Chase. Doesn't matter. It's peanuts at the end when you're splitting hairs on a few million. Now, what you have to remember is, why am I downplaying how much more? He has 2 years left on his deal. 2 years at about $32 million. Give or take a few $100,000. That means very little to them, but a lot to us, I'm sure. A total of 6 years, this would be $192 million. So the average per year over the next 6 years of him being a Bengal, which brings him up to being like 30 years old, will be $32 million per year. And I think we can stomach that. I think easily you can stomach that. Justin Jefferson, with 1 year left on his deal, got $35 million per year. And because he had 1 year at a higher rate, his 5th-year option, the way JaMarr Chase next year is on the 5th-year option, his average per year is just under 32. So Chase is just trying to beat him a little bit. And I'm rounding a little bit there. I mean, if I use exact numbers, I can give you exact what it is, but they're really close. It's not a $5 million per year difference, because Chase is saying to the Bengals, hey, I'll do a deal now this year with 2 years left of my rookie deal, and it'll save you money and it'll give me cash right now. This is good for both sides. This is a win for both sides. Chase gets money now. The Bengals get a lower cap hit for the life of the deal. Or you can wait next year and pretty much give them the same exact deal, and the cap hit instead will be like $36 million per year off the same deal, because you're wasting this year's cheap deal. And they've got like 15 million plus, depending on how much they like to carry over and save for IR and signing players throughout the year and things like that. They've got money they can use this year, cap space this year, that they're not going to use otherwise, to put towards JaMarr Chase's contract, and even lower the numbers in the future years even more by using it this year. So I think it's a win-win for both sides. I don't think this is a hard thing. And also, so there's other people have made this point, and Jake Lisco being one of them on Twitter, and I thought he was fantastic tweet by him. But he goes, if you're a Bengals fan and you want JaMarr Chase here, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember exactly what it is, but the sentiment I shared. If you're a Bengals fan and you want JaMarr Chase here, and you didn't think he was going to be the top paid receiver in the league at some point, like what were you expecting? What are you doing here? Why are you now against this? These are the numbers. I know it's a lot. I know it's crazy money, and it's a different realm than we live in. I understand that. But at the same time, we want Chase here, right? This is the going rate. And it is. No, say it's $5 million more than Jefferson. Sure. But you place JaMarr Chase in free agency, and he might get even more than $40 million per year. Easily. And if not, the next B-level receiver that's a free agent, like a Christian Kirk, is going to get $40 million a year because teams are thirsty in free agency. How many teams want JaMarr Chase? There'd be a line. There'd be so many teams that would want JaMarr Chase. And you're telling me now you're scared? Now you're scared to pay him what he's worth? It's crazy. I think as fans, we need to be careful sometimes because we bulk at these numbers. There's even people that said Joe Burrow got paid too much. Like, guys, these are what the guys get paid. Stop worrying about the numbers. You just have to make sure they're all still on the team and the team can field a competitive roster around their superstars. That's the goal for every team, right? And the Bengals should be able to. Because they haven't drafted particularly well since the JaMarr Chase pick. We talked about the rest of the 2021 class, right? There's not many guys that they have to pay coming up. They've got a couple years of this. They could even probably sign Chase and tag Higgins for another year and keep making a run at it with this trio for at least one more year after this year. And I think that's worth it. And if you don't, fine. But 98% of Bengals fans want JaMarr Chase in a Bengals uniform and do not care how it gets done. And when I see that offer, I think that's easy and it's a good sign. I think once we start to hear numbers, it means they've exchanged numbers. There's people wondering if they were even going to negotiate. Oh no, you got 2 years left. Honor your deal. Again, honor your deal. The guy has outplayed his deal at this point, and he's offering them an olive branch 2 years early. It's good for the Bengals to do it now. Today's price, tomorrow's price, two different things. You don't want to wait and let CeeDee Lamb and let Brandon Ayuk and let all these guys get their deals, and then you go and sign them. Chase said he was waiting for Jefferson. Jefferson signed. Chase is now ready, as evidenced by his hold out, hold in. Get the deal done, Bengals. And don't be surprised if it does get done in the next week to 2 weeks before the regular season starts and kicks off in an all-orange game in Paycor Stadium against the New England Patriots. That'll be fun. I can't wait for that one. I can't wait to review it. Still, we'll have a 53-man roster projection. We'll have a stat projection for the 2024 season. Those will come on next week's episode. We will do some film review if you want. If there's some players you focus on or you want to know about how they've done on the final preseason game, a lot of people don't watch that one. Would you rather me watch film of other players that they potentially could claim? Leave it in the comments. Let me know. Until then, this has been Bengals on the Brain, presented by First Star Logistics. I just did episode 112 in one take. 112.
Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realized self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.